Hello, this is Season 1, Episode 1 of Economics for Dummies. I'm your host, Kevin Anderson. I have credentials, but no one seems to care about any of that anymore, so let's just leave it at that. You can ask me the next time you see me. Because everyone seems to be wandering around in a daze, I'm prompted to start this service to explain the basics of economic theory and practice. I'm sending a complimentary copy to Jerry Powell and his cronies over at the Fed so they can learn something when they're laying about sucking up taxpayer money. I'm starting with SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, because that's what's in the news today. It didn't start today, but not long ago. Let's say a few months at most. Why did the FDIC take over SVB today? Because they're broke. SVB, that is. And why is that? To answer that, let's start a few years ago and call it the PC era, for pre-COVID. A nasty bug got loose somewhere, ask the Pentagon for details. The sky was falling, everyone in business and government flailed around, closed things down, did this and that and the other thing, including reducing effective interest rates to zero and giving away a lot of money. Let's also start with the proposition that cash is good to have. Maybe not as much cash as Wherein always seems to have, but enough. It's the only thing you can really rely on. Cash and, of course, real estate. When the effective payoff for holding cash is zero and you can borrow boatloads of leverage for nothing, what happens? You have a lot of money floating around seeking yields and buying stuff. Demand increases. What happens when you close the world down for a few months? Supply is disrupted and contracts. What happens when demand increases and supply contracts? You got it. Prices increase and shortages appear. Wow. That's what happened after AC or after COVID. Prices increased and shortages appeared. Wow. Rocket science. All that money seeking yields found treasuries, which looked like a good bet. Thing is, when the Fed finally gets around to raising interest rates rapidly because they realize they goofed by first lowering rates to zero and then holding them there for a long time, the yield curve on treasuries is inverted and they are now not much of a thing. So SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, which bought a lot of treasuries, now has to sell treasuries. Guess what? At a loss. So that's right, their positive yield just went south, all the way to South America somewhere. So they've got a lot of depositors and borrowers and stockholders wanting their money. Wow, what happens? Our old Uncle Sam in the guise of the FDIC comes along and takes over. End of story. End of SVB. So the moral of the story is that by constantly looking at the bark on the trees, the forest was towering above the Fed, and it goofed. Oops, my bad. Don't worry, we'll still have our jobs. Just a few trillion in equity will evaporate, and eventually the cycle will straighten out. When? Not this year. Stand by. And remember, supply and demand, you can't have one without the other. That's Basic Economics, Season 1, Episode 1. And that's the way it is. Friday, March 10, 2023. This is Walter Cronkite. Good night.